Hi, my name is Laura Mehl.
And I'm Nadia,
and this is To My Younger Artist,
a podcast where we, as performing artists and teachers, talk about what we wish we would have known when we were younger artists.
You can find us on Instagram and YouTube at To My Younger Artist Pod.
And we can't wait to share this with you.
Hey y'all, welcome back to My Younger Artist. My name is Laura Renee Mehl, and I am going to be talking to you all today about something that is extremely complicated, emotional, lots of feelings. Don't be scared. But something that we struggle with a lot in this industry, especially as adults. Some of my younger students, I think you'll also relate to this too, because I know you guys listen. I love you. Hi. But also everyone, I think, can relate to this on some level, and that is control within our industry. So one of the things I've been sitting with recently is that if you look at other industries, right? And this is something that has always been interesting to me. In other industries, a lot of the time there are like physical examples of success, right? And there are also like really clear examples of when you've done something well. So like feedback for you to be able to sit with and feel good about, have some level of pride in, right? And also there's some level of control that you have. And that is what this episode is about. Control. Because as people, we care. And this is a little bit like reflecting on Nadia's episode the other week. If you haven't listened to it, pop back 2 episodes. When we care about things, right, we put our heart and soul into things and therefore care about the outcome and also often feel the need for control. Now, I am not a therapist, obviously. I have taken some psychology classes, but I'm not certified. But I feel like it's important to note that most people in life like to have some sense of control, because if you were to exist with no sense of control whatsoever, right, then you're going to feel like you're just barreling through life with no course, no purpose, no set thing that you're trying to accomplish because it's not possible because you are not in control of anything, right? That would be kind of the deductive reasoning that you would end up with. And I often find myself looking for that same level of control in my career. Again, talking about other careers rather than the entertainment performance industry, which is, we'll get there. There are a lot of like really clear markers of like getting interviews at certain jobs and getting that job. And there are a lot of jobs out there a lot of the time. And then like benchmarks of whether or not you are successful. Let's say like a lawyer, for instance. You complete law school and get any other certifications that you decide that you need, right? And then you have the goal of either opening your own company or working at a firm. And there are a lot of different firms. And with the different firms come different levels of prestige. And then also once you start to work with a firm, which would be a sign of like, check, good, I am good at this, I did a good thing, right? I would hope. You move on to the next level, which is winning cases, right? Or like successfully completing certain things like tasks, like maybe you are a trademark or copyright lawyer and you help someone get their application through. Boom, did it, record time, like whatever that happens to be, right? And I find that our benchmarks in theater are much different. Theater, TV, film, voiceover, it's completely different. And seeing them and noticing them actually typically, I feel, ends up being something that you have to figure out for yourself. Which is kind of wild because most other places in life, you have somebody else who tells you whether or not something was good. And not that we don't have that too, right? Because if you book an audition, if you get called in for an audition, you book a job, anything like that, that is an obvious marker of success, right? / we know that. But in reality, a lot of the time, you also are a successful artist by booking the room, right? So even if you don't book that contract, there is an understanding that you did a good job if you walk out and feel good about the interaction that just happened, which I think is a little wild, especially for my friends with like social anxiety. Hi, love you, me too. It's hard because you don't want to fall for something that you might have conceived that you made up, right? And I think that is a place where also we talk about gaslighting and where we can gaslight ourselves, and we can feel like we had a great audition, or you could feel like you had a terrible audition, and it can just be off vibes and off of like what you're feeling, right? And the reality of it is you could have had an awesome audition and they just were like feeling terrible because they had the flu and they didn't want to talk much because they didn't want to spread their germs. So they were like, and you didn't feel like, oh, I did a terrible job, right? Or the inverse, somebody tells you, oh my gosh, that was so amazing. And then you don't book it. And then you have that moment of, were they just being nice to me? I don't know if anyone else gets. I'm sure other people do, because one thing that I'm finding as I get older, if you think it, somebody else also thinks it. But to like have that moment of, they said something really nice to me and I appreciate that. But somebody at my last audition just said something really nice to me. And the one before that did too. And now I'm starting to be like, are you all just like lying to me because I can't tell? So we have to backtrack and make the decision for ourselves whether or not we felt like we showed up for ourselves to the best level that we possibly could. And that's huge for a human, because you have to have your own ownership of you as a person and the material you're doing and the performance you're giving, and feeling brave and confident and honest and open. And it is a long list. And at the end of the day, just like everyone else in life, she's getting emotional by herself. It's helpful when Nadia's here. But at the end of the day, we all just want our lives to matter and for us to be seen and for our existence to have been of some importance to someone, to something. It's at the base of like all humanity, right? Because we know that our time here is finite. So we try to control things. We're going to loop back around to that. I promise I'm going to talk on it. Because of the fact that we care about the outcome, because of the fact that we want it to matter, that we existed, that we were here, that we made something, that our life meant something. And the reality of it is, there is not a lot of control within our industry. There is not, you can't control what's popular. I mean, you can try and start a trend on TikTok or Instagram. You can try and make something popular, right? And if you don't necessarily have a level of notoriety, then that's going to be harder to do, right? So there's only a certain amount that you can control in that regard. So let's say that somebody with my body type is not popular to cast right now, which is not inaccurate. But like, let's say that that's a thing. That is going to affect whether or not I get cast, right? It could also be a thing of, and this isn't a thing right now, but if they were like, no, not redheads. We need to not cast redheads. And then it'd be like, oh, great. Okay, cool. But that's not an indicator of my talent level or my capability as an artist, right? So what we have to start doing is creating our own level of control, which starts a little bit in routine, which I talked about before and why it's important. But it is because you control your energy. You control, oh my gosh, so many things in life that we don't even think about. Like whether or not you are happy, you're in charge of that. That's not anybody else's problem. 100% not. You have to make the decision to do things that are going to bring you joy in order to feel happiness. Now, somebody else might be nice to you and be like a really good friend and give to you in that way. but you are still in charge of receiving that. You're also in charge of making that friend and connecting with them, right? So you have control over that. You also have control over basic things that have to do with this industry, right? What did you wear that day? Did you feel confident in what you wore, right? What did it fit the character that you were going in for? Did you bring material that was prepared, and did you feel really good about it? Like, regardless of what could have happened otherwise, like, you can't control the accompanist. That's not possible. I mean, you could bring someone, but you can't control them, right? You can't control how people are going to react to your monologue. You can't control people's like past traumas that you might be talking about something and they'll be like, I literally can't even listen to this person now because of the fact that this reminds me of my mother and I don't talk. I don't know. Like, there's a ton of ways that things can go sideways, and this is how arbitrary everything is. And I think that's really important to like know and sit with, but also knowing that you are in control of whether or not you go to that audition. You are in control of whether or not you like are going to get up every day this week and practice and warm up and take care of your body and put yourself out there. You are in charge of whether or not you make your own work. Sometimes you're even in charge of whether or not your own work is produced, because maybe you have to become a producer. I have a wonderful friend named Patrick who has written a beautiful show called The Startup. And he fully became a producer for his own show so that his work will be produced. First off, go off. It's amazing. Second off, the drive and the level of knowledge of the importance of the story, which it's very important, especially right now. Knowing that in your heart is something that he had to feel and he had to create for himself and then give himself a level of control over. And I think so often in this industry, we get stuck and bogged down feeling like you can't control whether or not somebody wants a redhead, whether or not somebody wants a 5'2" person, whether or not they like the color of your voice, whether or not they like the way you play guitar or piano or violin, like whatever it happens to be, you can't control that. You can control whether or not you put your heart out there and in good faith did the best that you could and shared your heart and shared your art. Whew. Getting overwhelmed. Because this is something that's been sitting with me. It's been sitting with me a lot. Because we're heading into audition season. And there's going to be a lot of things that we have no control over. And we do need it to a certain level, right? We can let go of a lot of things, but we do need some stability, some boundaries, some balance. But sitting with and meditating on, first off, the things that you can control, the things that are healthy for you to control, and the things that are helpful for you to control, is something that I think that we as artists have to start doing for ourselves. Because again, there's no real marker for success, for talent, for hard work. There's a stereotypical one where we can say, well, you haven't been on Broadway, so you're not successful. And that makes me want to puke because that's just not true. It's not true. I actually got turned down for a job one time and was looked down on and talked down to really intensely, which is part of why I don't work there anymore. But it was a promotion and I was up for it. And one of the responses was, well, you haven't performed on Broadway. No, I haven't. Guess what? A lot of people haven't. It's a finite position. It's a finite place. And that doesn't mean that you are any less of a teacher, any less of an artist, any less of a person. Because our industry marks things differently. And the most important thing for you to do is to take care of yourself. And to give yourself joy. To show up for yourself the way you deserve to be shown up for, which is wholeheartedly and beautifully and full of trust, with the hope and the dream and the drive that eventually one day things will pan out and you will book that gig that you want. You will create that role that you want. You will have your work seen and appreciated and leave your mark on the world in some way. And sometimes it's important to remember that leaving your mark on the world in some way doesn't necessarily mean that you performed on Broadway, that you performed off Broadway, that you performed, wherever. I think more than anything, especially lately, the most important thing, obviously, by the way, much respect to people that have performed on Broadway. You guys have the hardest job because of the fact that you have to show up 8 times a week and give that energy so insanely. And it is so hard to get. And I respect you so much. This is just, and I think you'll also agree with me that just because you haven't done that doesn't make you a lesser artist or a lesser person or a lesser creator, to clarify that. But I say that to say that anymore, the most important thing, I think, to leave your mark on the world is to be a good person. And to remember that it's not necessarily like the pictures that you took, the photo shoot that you were in, the thing that you booked, that you did, that exists for a blip in time. It's the souls and the hearts that you touch and the way that you change the actual energy in a room or in a person. And I think that is something you can control. And I think for me, that is something I'm going to focus on this audition season. As far as control goes, it's going to be how I respond to things. It's going to be how I show up for myself, how I show up for other people, how I know what my boundaries are. And most of all, how I know whether or not I'm proud of myself. I hope you all are proud of yourselves for showing up and learning and trying something new every single day. Keep being brave. Keep making art. Keep putting yourself out there, because at the end of the day, you are the most important thing in your own life. Ooh, that sounds selfish. It's not. And what matters is whether or not you are treating other people well, first off, and whether or not you are taking care of yourself, and whether or not you are happy. Love you guys. Bye.
This episode of To My Younger Artist was hosted by Renee Mehl, with music by Laura and all edits done by Dustin Ciano. Thanks for listening.